Welcome to the Beats WonderCon 2023 coverage, sponsored by Bad Idea Comics. Tati, your probably biggest animation voiceover role is the Willow in the Owl House. Watching the film, I definitely felt they were similar characters. I definitely felt something similar to them. I'm curious if you tapped into something similar, how playing her, Li Cain, was different from Willow.
I think I definitely didn't. I don't think that I synonymized them myself, but I think that Kylie is definitely, I think, naturally a lot tougher than Willow. We see in the Owl House Willow sort of grow and toughen her skin over time, while Kylie, prior to the movie, she's had quite a lot of struggle through life that has already made her that sort of tough exterior, and she's had to preserve herself through life. So I feel like Kylie is a bit tougher, a bit more quirky than Willow. But I guess that they do share the same heart and the same empathy. Yeah.
Chris, before, you're probably best known for, in DC animation, voicing the Flash, correct?
Yes.
Watching the film, I had to remind myself that this was the same actor playing Oliver Queen who played the Flash. I just couldn't recognize your voice at all. Definitely, I love it brings, Ollie has comedic humor to it, but a lot of death and sadness to him. Curious how that was like for you, going from, the Flash to Oliver Queen in this.
It was great. I mean, Flash is fun and was one of my favorite characters since I was a kid. So it was a blast doing that. But in those movies, almost always, I think until the last movie, it was really kind of just comedic stuff. We didn't go too deep. So doing Oliver was great because it was a completely different time period, which is fun and requires kind of a different accent and really helps with the voice, honestly. But then also, when he gets so deep, before he passes out from being so drunk, like you really, you get to play with that, where the emotions just bubble out because all the walls have been drowned at the bottom of the bottle. And he really reveals himself and becomes very vulnerable. So it was fun. And, who doesn't love like drunk singing at a piano?
So after the Oscars, there's been a lot of nostalgia for Temple of Doom after the Kiwi Kwan and Harrison Ford reunion. And just coincidentally, after watching the film a few days after the Oscars, Oliver's and Li Cain's relationship isn't too dissimilar, or at least I felt, to Short Round and Indiana Jones. I'm not sure if that ever occurred to you while making it, but I'm curious how you feel Oliver and Li Cain's relationship starts out and how it grows and develops throughout the film.
Well, honestly, I really, having watched the movie, it's, doing these things, it's always the bittersweet part of it is, we didn't actually get to work together.
Right.
So I was so pleased to see how those scenes came together and how, you felt a kinship between the two characters, and you felt kind of like a mentoring type of, fatherly almost relationship that Oliver felt toward her. I would have loved to have seen it, what it could have turned into. But,
likewise. Very much likewise. Yeah, I would have loved to see the same, because I think that you see the little bit of growth that Kylie, I think, initially thinks that Oliver's who is this dude? He's drunk, he's obnoxious, what's happening? And then she starts to see, I think, him a little bit more clearly, see his heart and empathizes with him in that way, empathizes with his pain, and appreciates the way in which that Oliver takes her under his wing in that way. So yeah, I would have really loved to see that have a chance to grow and see Kylie get a new big brother out of it. Yeah.
So the film is based on a comic that was co-written by Mike Mignola. Don't know if you two are familiar with comics, but he's probably best known for the Hellboy. If you haven't read the comics, you most likely know of seeing the Guillermo del Toro films. That's obviously Lovecraftian inspired. I'm curious if you had any familiarity with Hellboy or particularly Lovecraft before making this film?
Some experience with Hellboy, really through the movie, not the graphic novels.
Same.
Yeah, and then Lovecraft a little bit, from high school. I remember playing a role-playing game. I can't remember what it was called, but based on Lovecraft. And then I loved Lovecraft Country. Just came out a couple of years ago. That I was obsessed with that show. So it was kind of it was fresh in my mind from that show.
I similarly don't have much experience. Experience with Hellboy through the movie, but I am just a big fan of everything Lovecraftian. I and I'll probably sound crazy for saying this, but I do think that there's another world behind ours, and so it's I'm watching these things to take notes, and you never know what's out there. But yeah.
So Lovecraft taps into darkness, especially consider what was happening during his lifetime. We had World War I. He actually went through a pandemic himself, in the country. Considering what we've gone through, it's not too far off from the sentiments in the film. Curious, while recording your voices for the film, if that whole theme of doom resonated with you?
Oh, it's kind of really, yeah, absolutely. Just to know the state of our world right now, and that, well, there is a lot of hope going around, which is really wonderful, but to feel this sort of pressing, with what's happening with the climate, what's happening with racial and sort of social issues, it does feel very looming. But in the same way that they find that hope in the movie, and that when we come to our ending and sort of we see, it's how do I talk about this without giving it away? We see that there is another chapter coming, or that there is a continuation that can happen. It I think will hopefully give people the same reflection of hope in our own world, that when something like a phoenix always rises from the ashes, right? And that hopefully that we can do the same thing. Yeah.
I think it dramatizes in a really interesting way the kind of sacrifice that's needed to tackle something that huge, right? So for me, climate change for me is kind of the doom, right? That's out there that people are talking about, but also mostly ignoring. And the kind of sacrifice that is required to deal with that is scary.
So having played Li Cain and Oliver Queen, and in the past, The Flash, any other DC characters you would love a chance to voice or even play in live action in the future?
Catwoman. Oh, since I was a child, because Eartha Kitt's one of my biggest idols, and one of the first things that I saw of her was the original Catwoman. So that's a dream of mine if I can at some point. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, I'm dying. I keep pressing Warner Brothers for a Wonder Twins movie. Why have we not done the Wonder Twins?
Twin powers? Activate.
Right? Let's go.
Warm a bucket of ice. It's more dramatic.
I second that notion. I second that wholeheartedly.
On that note, Tati, Christopher, it's been an immense pleasure chatting with you. Hopefully that Wonder Twins film project comes to fruition someday. Thanks again to our sponsor, Bad Idea Comics.